Hey everyone, and welcome back to my Rambly Thing, a series where I talk in a rather unscripted and podcasty kind of manner. Today I'm going to be talking all about Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, not Wise Ansem, the better Ansem. He's my favourite character in Kingdom Hearts, as most of you probably already know by now, and he's probably my favourite villain in gaming as well. So I feel like dedicating a whole episode to him, it kind of makes sense for me. So I'm just going to talk a bit about why I like the character so much, some of the changes in the character over time, some of the story elements of him, I guess. So why do I like Ansem? Well, one, he's just really cool, both in terms of design and personality and powers and just everything about him, basically. I guess we'll start with design, as in visual design. So he was the first to get that outfit. That outfit obviously ended up going to Xehanort with some slight changes, but he's the original design that Nomura made. He's the original Kingdom Hearts villain. He may not be, canonically, chronologically the original, but in terms of who was designed first, it's him. And everything really kind of stems from him. As far as Xehanort goes, everything stems from him when it comes to what Nomura designed for other characters. So he's kind of like that source. The very first villain, the villain of my favourite game, so of course I'm going to like him for that. And yeah, let's just look at his outfits, I guess, because he's got many different forms, Ansem. First of all, we have his kind of true form when he's in the brown cloak, right? And this is after Apprentice Xehanort, stabbed himself, turned himself into a Heartless and nobody. And this is what his Heartless looks like, because he didn't have a body. He just is this rather creepy, rather not quite human brown cloak. And the robed figure, it is just weird. Look at the bend. He's got this weird bend in the body that's not natural. Like a human body wouldn't have that. So there's not like there's a human body inside there. It's just a heart, right? It's just the appearance he's taking. It's so basic. It's sort of like a precursor to when we see the organization coats. But they're a bit more human compared to this. This thing is just so strange that when we see it in Melody of Memory, you can see how weird it looks in Unreal Engine, because it feels like it doesn't really fit Unreal Engine. It does look better in the old engine, in my opinion, because it just looks less realistic and more stylized, which fits what's going on here better. But I love the concept art here. I just think it's such a spooky appearance. It's such a weird, unnatural thing. Like this appearing before Sora, yeah, it'd be pretty creepy. And why has he got the two belts around the front? Even on one of the most basic designs Nomura has ever made, he had to put some belts on there somewhere. I guess it just holds the whole thing together. But yeah, that's a robed figure. Not too much to say about it. Well, I was going to say about his voice, but I'll get back to that later. Let's just talk about design for now. So obviously after that, Ansem possesses Riku, and we get Riku Ansem. And in terms of design, it's just the Riku design, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I really do love that scene when he possesses him. The way he coaxes him into it and tries to reassure him, and is like, oh, you can go stronger. He's not being a yelling, shouting villain. He's not really that often a yelling villain in Kingdom Hearts. He is one of the more sort of toned down villains. At the end of the first game, obviously in the bosses, he does shout a bit, and other points in the series he can be a bit shouty. But he does tend to be quite calm a lot of the time, and that's one thing I do like about him. But yeah, this scene where he possesses him, and it just slowly goes towards him, and then the camera pans up, and you don't actually see it happen. It's just really creepy. And in fact, he's been letting Maleficent manipulate Riku all this time just to set him up as this good vessel that he can use. It's really well done. I love that little story arc that Riku has. Oh yeah, actually there's one more thing to say about the robed figure, and that's from the Ultimania interviews. So Nomura said it was based on the robed figures who wanted reunion in Final Fantasy VII. That's kind of interesting. And then in early stages he also had a face, and he was going to appear wherever Sora went to leave mysterious messages. So it appears that Ansem originally was going to be a bit more prevalent in the story rather than just popping up a bit and then coming in at the end. He was going to appear wherever Sora went. Like imagine a Disney World, he just pops up as the robed figure. That'd be kind of interesting. It didn't happen. But yeah, it's interesting they were going to give him a face. I'm glad they didn't. It looks better without the face, I think. And then in later stage of development, he was going to be a mysterious old man from Destiny Islands. Well, that ended up being true. He actually reused that concept. Like, you say he was going to be a mysterious old man, but he kind of was, his original form. So that was a little fun thing, an idea that he had and actually did following through on. And then he gains a form, of course. He uses Riku's body and he actually gains a form. And we can look at that in this concept art here. And this is just a great concept art. I mean, this It just sums him up completely. We can look at his outfit and everything here. So this is the original design. It's obviously going for this sort of researcher thing, right, with this long coat, a bit like a lab coat. And of course, we got lots of straps and buckles and things. The gloves, I really think, we don't really think about the gloves very much in Kingdom Hearts because they're just gloves, right? But these are just so like extravagant, and not in terms of color or anything, but just how big they are. They're just like so huge. They go up so much of the arm. I just find that quite funny. And of course, Ansem is probably the most muscular character in Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, like, I mean, it's kind of because he came from Terra, but in terms of originally being designed, like, this man's torso is crazy huge. It's pretty wild. And then, yeah, obviously the coat itself. The yellow trim, I really think this is why I prefer his coat over Xehanort's, because of this yellow trim. It just really completes the whole thing. It just makes it pop really nicely, I think. And obviously Ansem's hair, which is quite subtle in-game, and it's not quite so much there in Kingdom Hearts 3, but I think it is slightly there, but it's not quite so obvious. It actually goes from a sort of grey at the top down to a bit more of a bluish colour. And you can see that in his Cage 1 and sort of the old engine renders. Like I said, not so much in the new ones, but you can kind of see it there. But yeah, it's mostly in the old renders. And of course, he's got the slight smirk going on. So yeah, it's a really good design. And actually, we can see Nomura's comments on this as well. I like this type of character, so I was naturally motivated. I planned to give him golden hair and pale skin, but as I looked at several colour variations, I settled on the current colours, which are the exact opposite. Yeah, he's got dark skin and he's got silver hair. So that's quite interesting that he originally had golden hair and pale skin. Like, imagine Xehanort being like that. It's just weird to think about, isn't it? And it's funny how he says, I like this type of character. He has before said in interviews that Ansem is his favourite character. You have good taste, sir. Like he said various things, like Luxord was his favourite organisation member at one point, he said. I think at one point he said Xigbar was his favourite in Cage 2. Xehanort, Xehanort himself, he actually relates to most. But I do remember in one interview he said Ansem was his favourite. And it's interesting how he does hint at, Apprentice Xehanort here, although at the time it was just Ansem, I guess, in name. But this is his form after casting away his body. What is his true form? I'll leave that for another time. Obviously that's going to come into play in Kingdom Hearts 2. And now to compare the actual look of Ansem from original Cage 1 to the HD version, because there are some changes. So actually the easy way to do this would be to look at all his coats first, because there's a certain sequence to this. So we got this nice handy model comparison here, and as you can see, Kingdom Hearts to Recom, to Rechain of Memories, it changed the coat quite a bit. His face pretty much stayed the same, but the coats changed to actually look more like the concept art, because the original Kingdom Hearts 1 model is a bit iffy. For example, the pauldrons on his shoulders, they're a bit blue, which they're not in the concept art, they're much darker than that. He doesn't have the buttons on his inner jacket. The outer jacket is a little bit too light in the first game, so they darken that a bit. And generally it's just a cleaner looking model in Recon, right? And I'll say right now, Rechain of Memories Ansem is my favourite in terms of design and looks. Definitely my favourite one. And then we go into Kingdom Hearts 3D, and the coat's pretty much the same as it was in Recon, except his belt is the other way around in this, which they also changed back after that. So it's just a random thing about DDD is they changed the belts. Oh, and by the way, in case anyone's gotten confused before, the Heartless emblem is attached to his coat, it's not on his chest. You can see it's actually overlaid on top of the 2 yellow strips. So yeah, in terms of the actual outfit, the DDD Ansem is pretty much the same. And then the same goes for the HD model really, which takes all its cues from the Recon model. You can see it looks just like that. The belts are going back to the right way round again. The colours are all same, I don't think there's any changes there. So yeah, the HD one is all pretty much the same except for his face. And this is where things change a little bit. So as you can see, his face changed quite a lot between Kingdom Hearts and Recom's version, and then 3D and HD's version. And I'll bring up just an easier comparison with Cage 1 and Cage HD. So looking at a close-up of the face here, we can see what they've pretty much done is they've tried to make it look more like Apprentice Xehanort, like Terra basically, right? They've made it a little bit fuller. They've changed the face structure a bit, not hugely, but it's a bit different. And he doesn't have quite so long a chin and jaw now, like it's a bit more squarish. I personally preferred how he looked originally. I don't really think they needed to change this, to be honest. I think he looked fine. It's his Heartless, it doesn't need to look that close to the original, to be honest, in my opinion. And since everything was kind of based off him anyway, I don't think they needed to make these changes. Yeah, the DDD model actually I think is a little bit worse than the KH1 HD model as well. The DDD one, there's just something a little bit odd about it. It's not hugely different. I think it might be his mouth. His mouth feels a bit different to the KH1. I don't know why. Maybe it's a bit closer to the nose. There's just something a little bit strange about the DDD one. So I don't like it quite as much. It still looks good, of course, but I don't like it quite as much as the KH1 HD, and I don't like that as much as the Recon model, which is my absolute favorite model of his, as I said. And then of course there's the fact that his skin tone changed a bit. It's not huge because he was always sort of a tan tone, but they definitely made him a bit lighter to fit with the whole Xehanort, Apprentice Xehanort, you know, and Xemnas and everything, get them a bit more in line. He's still got the darkest skin tone of any Kingdom Hearts character, I think, along with probably Old Man Xehanort. But yeah, I do think it's a bit of a shame they did this. Like, I preferred it when he was as dark as he is in original KH1 and Recon, just saying. I think it's a bit of a shame as well that we don't have a Kingdom Hearts character that has a darker skin tone than him. Like, and he's not even that dark, right? He's kind of tan. So yeah, it would be nice if they could introduce maybe another darker character than this, just for diversity's sake. I feel like there's not that much diversity in skin tones in Kingdom Hearts, but that's a different topic. But yeah, in terms of the actual coat, they definitely made a lot of improvements from Kingdom Hearts original to Rechain of Memories, and that one really set the stage for the rest of the series to follow. Like, they all pretty much base it on how he's designed there, because it's quite accurate to the concept art. And then there's his appearance in Kingdom Hearts 3. Of course, a lot of the characters did go through a bit of a change in appearance just because it's a new engine. So of course it's going to look a bit different, you know, it's not the old style. So there is that. But I actually do really like his Kingdom Hearts 3 look. I prefer it over most of them except for Recon, basically. I feel like it still captures what he looks like. I think some of his features are a bit too soft looking, but that tends to go for a lot of these Unreal Engine models. I think it's just an Unreal Engine thing. Like, they don't quite have the sharpness that the old engine did. So that's just by the by, that goes for a lot of the characters. Like Axel as well, he's another one who I can kind of see that a lot with. But the coat looks really good in this engine. The colours are really nice, I've got to say. One thing you might notice that's different from all the others is the hair. I'd say this is the thing that's changed the most from KH3 compared to the other models. See, if you look at, say, this image of Rechain of Memories here, his hairline at the front is kind of choppy. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but you see how it sort of fades in and out a bit, and it is like there's little spikes. Well, that's pretty much the case for all the games. And in the concept art, you can kind of see that, although it's not as exaggerated. But you can see like it goes back a bit in the concept here on the side. You see like there's a little bit of the skin showing there. But KH3, if you look at his hairline, is completely like straight, right? You can see it's very arched, very back, and it's much straighter. And what's interesting is this is more following the intro movies and stuff from Kingdom Hearts. So if we look all the way back to the KH2 intro, we can see that's what his hair looks like. Like you can see right here, that's very similar, right? Now in this intro, he has more of his sort of KH1 face. But yeah, look, you can see his hairline is completely straight there and it's quite high. And then we look at the KH3 model and that's, oh, right. It seems like they've based on that, you know. We could also look at the intro for KH3, you know, the cinematic. And this, by the way, is one of my favorite pictures of him. You can see his hair is straight here as well and matching what it actually looks like in KH3. So they definitely went for more of that with the hair. That is probably a wish from Nomura. I'm going to assume he designed him and kind of wanted his hair more like that. But, you know, I'll take both. And also this picture from KH3's intro is just really cool. I mean, look at the jacket, look at the textures. The lighting's really cool. His right hand that you can see folded up there is a bit weird looking. His fingers are really weird looking, but I'm guessing that's just like the render just looks strange, or maybe just that still image looks strange. But yeah, anyway, that's the changes. Of course, there's one other model that's on that picture that I didn't mention, and that's the KH2 Riku Ansem look, or as I call it, the ugly Ansem, because I really hate this model. It just doesn't look like Ansem very well at all. Now, in fairness, it's kind of Riku Ansem, right? It's not actually Ansem. And I know he's using his dark power and it makes him look like Ansem. But the way I think of it is, this is like a mix between the two. It's not quite Ansem, at least I think that's how this has been done. Because, yeah, it doesn't really look much like Ansem himself. I mean, it does. But it's obviously quite different in face shape. The hair's a bit different. You know, it's not really like what you see in the other games, so I assume it's intentional, but I really don't like it. So I'm glad it's not like an actual thing. I'm glad like KH3 didn't decide to make him look like that again, because That would have been really bad. So yeah, no, I don't like that model, but it's okay because it's not actually him. I think the KH3 model also can depend on angle as to how good he looks. Again though, I think this is an Unreal Engine thing, because I see that with some other characters as well. At some angles they don't look so good. Xemnas has this as well, I think. So yeah, I don't want to go too hard on that because I think it's just a thing with those models. Also, of course, we have Ansem and the organization coat. I don't really care for this because, you know, he's in the organization coat. It's not his proper outfit. It's just making him look more like everyone else. Unfortunately, in most of KH3, he spends most of the time in this coat, which is sad because I like to see him in his original coat because it just suits him really well. But at least by the end of the game, I was very glad when I played it to find out that he brings his original coat back for the final battles and such, so I'm very glad they did that. If he'd just been in the organization coat the whole time, that would have been kind of sucky. I guess it makes sense because he wasn't in the org coat the whole time in DDD. It's just like a formality, and you know, it makes sense for when they all gather in the graveyard, so he needs to match up with the rest of them. And I guess that can bring us on to another point, and that's his personality. I'm not really good at talking about characters' personalities and stuff. It's just not really something I can do very well. I don't really talk about writing that much. I can talk about what I see in front of me, like the design and the looks and everything, because that's more how my brain works. But talking about concepts like emotions and personality, not as easy. I mean, yeah, in KH1, that's where I had my favorite personality because, one, because of the voice. Two, because I feel like he's just a bit more ruthless in that. He's a bit more creepy, but he's also got this kind of like convincing nature. You know, he's very subtle. The way he's talking to Riku and manipulating him, the way he's talking to Sora, and, you know, patronizing him, but he's quite calm about it and everything. And then at the end, when he gains that form, that's when he becomes a bit more brash and a bit more cocky and proud. You know, I think he's just enjoying himself a lot at the end of the game when he feels really powerful. But when he's in that cloaked form, yeah, you know, it seems like he knows he's vulnerable and he's kind of just playing up to it. And he's using subtlety and that sort of thing to get by. So I did really like that. The funny thing with Ansem is he seems to like working alone. Now, I don't know if I'm looking too much into this, but in KH1 he's working alone, right? Well, he's got the Heartless with him. And he knows Xemnas is out there doing his thing. But his own plan is his own plan, right? And what he's doing with the world's hearts and destroying the worlds and everything. And also, yeah, I guess he did the whole thing of, you know, meeting his younger self, young Xehanort, and doing that side plan. But in terms of KH1, he's enacting his whole plan. He's doing it alone, and he seems pretty happy about it. Because in KH3, it's funny, in KH3, you don't see him interacting much with the other organization members. You don't see any meetings with him there. You know, he's with Xemnas at one point, because of course he had to be, and he's talking, and another point, you know, he's with Xemnas and Xigbar, and he doesn't really seem to be enjoying the fact he's with them that much. He seems visibly irritated, along with Xemnas when Xigbar comes in. And at the end of the game, he's with Xigbar again, but really that's just because they're grouped together because of who they're fighting with Riku. And of course we see him with young Xehanort and Xehanort because they're like the last bastion. They're the most core forms of Xehanort. So yeah, there's that. But he seems like he likes working alone. When we look at what he was talking about in KH3, and he's saying about how the others betrayed, you know, Vexen and that lot, he knows they betrayed them, but he doesn't do anything about it. It's like he got a bit depressed in KH3. Obviously this is a time-traveling version of him, but he's like being depressed about everything. He's like, oh, you know, they betrayed us, but I'm starting not to see the point of all this anymore, which I thought was kind of cool. It's not really a character arc because we don't really see it. He just says, fine, have it your way then. Like he's at Burger King. And then at the end of the game, he says to Sora and Riku, nothing seemed to matter anymore. I knew I never stood a chance. You know, he's just kind of gone like, well, I know that I'm probably going to be defeated, and I know that I end up defeated when I go back to my original time, but hey, let's just have some fun at the end of the game, I guess. What does he say? When the others betrayed us, I found I did not care, right? He's not even like caring about the plan anymore. Yeah, at the end of the game, he still kind of talks with Xehanort like he does care, but his face does seem to show that he's not really that invested. So yeah, I wish there was a bit more to this. I think with a lot of KH3, with the villains especially, they have these ending bits where, not redeemed, but, you know, they show a bit more emotion, a bit more reason for what they're doing. But we never really saw an arc with that. We didn't see it in progress. They just kind of say it at the end of the game and then that's it. And I know that's because there's so many characters and not enough time, but It would have been nice to have seen a bit more of his reasons for this. Maybe if he actually talked to Xemnas, that would have been interesting, because he doesn't talk to Xemnas. He talks with Xemnas, and like kind of talks to him when they're with Xigbar, right? But we don't really see him interact with many other characters in the villains roster anyway. So I would have liked to have seen him talking with Xemnas about the nature of their existence or something. Like, that way we could have also had Xemnas talk about his heart and everything. He knows he's getting a heart at the end of the game. He says he's feeling loneliness and everything. And I'm not saying they should have a heart-to-heart conversation. I'm just saying it'd be interesting to look into the nature of them, because Xemnas as a nobody, that's kind of been explored a bit, you know, nobody's growing hearts and the nature of being a nobody. And even if you grow a heart, you still repress the feelings. But we never really saw what it's like to be a sentient heartless, right? Because nearly all the heartless in the games are very instinct-driven. They're just like animals, right? They can't properly think, they can't talk. So Ansem's like one of a kind, you know, you got Scar, his heartless is a bit like that, and Sora's heartless can think a bit more logically, but he still can't talk. So his Ansem, who's a heartless, he's driven by instinct, and it would have been nice to have seen that a bit more, I think, to explore that a bit more, what it's like to be a sentient, thinking, really living heartless. I don't know, I like to think about it anyway. Like, one headcanon I have is the reason why he's kind of depressed in KH3, and the reason he's like, I found I didn't care, is because of instinct. You know how the heartless work on instinct, and it feels a bit like, well, his instincts are telling him that they're gonna lose, so then he just doesn't see the point anymore. If a heartless decides what to do based on its instinct, then it makes sense that he decides not to really care anymore based on his instincts that, you know, Riku's gonna beat him because his strength is vaster than darkness. So that would have been interesting. I don't know if that was necessarily the case. That's probably just a headcanon. But I don't know, I just like to think about it a bit. Not a whole lot to say about DDD Ansem, because it's kind of just a precursor to KH3 Ansem, and it's more like developing his and Riku's story, which is the main part of his character, really, in terms of relationships, as him and Riku and their journey together. Now, it's a bit weird because a lot of their journey together was in Chain of Memories, right, with Ansem's shadow, which, since he got destroyed in KH1, but part of him, you know, lingered on in Riku, it's kind of like a different Ansem, in a way. It's a bit weird. I do like Ansem's shadow in Chain of Memories. You know, the voice is a bit iffy in that game, but I do like his character and how sort of, like, cocky he is, and how he's trying to manipulate Riku once again, and how he seems to be kind of enjoying this dynamic they have. And then in DDD, they have more of a dynamic and talk to each other. But I do love his personality most in KH1, and a lot of that is because of the voice, right? In KH1, the voice actor is Billy Zane. It's the only game he's voice acted in for. You know, Chain of Memories original, they reuse voice clips like Submit, so there's the same voice actor there, technically. But from Chain of Memories, KH2, and everything onwards, it's all Richard Epcar, of course. Now, yeah, I much prefer Billy Zane's take on the character. There's a few reasons for that. One, I feel like he's got the subtlety way better than Richard Epcar did. He's got that subtle but slightly menacing voice, but also it's kind of a nice voice to listen to, even though it's a villain voice. And he also, while it can be a bit hammy at the end, he has some great battle quotes as well. And just the way he delivers them, I think he's got quite a lot of nuance in some of the lines as well. Like, he doesn't just say the lines at all. Like, he adds little bits to them, little grunts of pain and confusion and that sort of thing. I'll just play some of my favorites and maybe you'll see why, or hear why, I guess.
Do not deny your fear. My strength returns. Submit! You insolent little. Come, darkness. Now, you weak-hearted fools, witness real power! All shall be extinguished.
Billy Zane just... his voice is probably my favorite, like, voice in anything. As Ansem, I mean. So, he just did so well with the character, and it's a real shame they didn't ask him back. We never really know why. He doesn't know why. Some people say it's because of a film he made, but that's never really been confirmed, and people have said he still worked after that, so I don't know if that is the case, this like anti-American film or whatever. I'm not going to go too much into that. It's just a shame he didn't get asked back, really. And Richard Epcar, see, the thing with him is he got better and better as he went on, right? In KH2, which was his first performance, You know, where he's dubbing over Billy Zane's lines at the start in the flashbacks. That's where he's at his worst, I think. You know, you can hear it in the Kingdom Hearts Fill Me With the Power of Darkness line, right? Just compare the two.
Kingdom Hearts, fill me with the power of darkness. Kingdom Hearts, fill me with the power of darkness.
Chain of Memories is kind of the same. He's quite hammy. He's sort of yelly, especially Submit.
Submit!
You know, he doesn't... I don't know. I think Richard Epcar, it doesn't help that I hear his voice in everything. Like, I don't watch anime, but he's in a lot of anime. But he's also in a lot of games. Like, yeah, if you played other games than Kingdom Hearts, there's a chance you may have heard him in those as well. Like Skyrim, for example. I've played the shit out of that game. And he's a lot of the characters in that. So there is that. There's also the fact that he voices Terranaut as well. So it makes Ansem's voice a bit less unique. Like Xemnas, his voice is unique. He doesn't voice anybody else. But with Ansem, it's Terranaut, which is also Apprentice Naut, and then also Ansem. Yeah, Ansem's is a deeper version than the previous two, but I still think it's a bit of a shame. I just prefer it where possible that everyone has a unique voice, and even if it is a character that's spawned off another character, they can still have a unique voice, because yeah, Xemnas has his own unique voice. So, can you imagine if we still had Epcar as Terranaut, Apprentice Naut, but we also still had Billy Zane as Ansem? Imagine Billy Zane and, you know, Paul St. Peter together, doing those lines together. I think that would have been so cool to hear. But, you know, that's the past. We can't do anything about it now anyway. But it's so nice, that story about the fan meeting in Toronto, where basically, well, I'll link the thread to it, but essentially Billy Zane actually remembered the role, and he sketched a little picture of Ansem, not from memory. If you look at the original thread, he actually did have a reference on the phone, but he sketched the picture and did the signature, and he actually remembers the role. I just think that's really cool that he still remembers it, even though it was only a one-time thing. So yeah, it's a shame, but hey. Anyway, let's move on. So, anything else I wanted to talk about with Ansem? Talked a lot about character and everything. I guess just a bit more about why I like him. So I really feel like, this might sound silly, but I think we can relate to some characters in ways. Now, yeah, I can't relate to someone who wants to destroy the worlds and, you know, is as sadistic and, you know, he's a villain. Like, that's not me. But in terms of some of his traits, like how he's kind of seems to prefer working alone, that's one thing I can certainly relate to. The fact he uses darkness and those sorts of attacks, and that imagery has always been my favourite in Kingdom Hearts, just the darkness themed stuff. I like villains. Like, all my favourite Kingdom Hearts characters pretty much are villains, so there's that as well. And I like how he's sort of interested in learning more and exploring, obviously because he's based off of Apprentice Xehanort. And yeah, you know, my channel's all about exploring and stuff, and just looking at details and knowledge and just researching and finding stuff out, and so I kind of relate to that as well. I wish my voice was as cool as his is in KH1, but hey, we can't have everything, can we? Also, he folds his arms a lot, and I tend to do that as well. Although actually I tend to put my hands behind my back more like Xehanort or Zaldin, or more accurately the Master of Masters, because Xehanort and Zaldin kind of hunch over, but Master of Masters doesn't. So yeah, I kind of put my hands behind my back like Master of Masters sometimes. Oh god. I don't know why I do that. But yeah, anyway. Oh yeah, also the Dark Figure. I think he is at his absolute best when he's got the Dark Figure behind him. Another thing that was kind of taken away from him, because Terranaut ends up inheriting back the Dark Figure in Cage 3, and, you know, it's more like Terranaut's thing. That's the thing with Ansem. He's like the progenitor of everything that came after it. He's the original villain in terms of design. Everything kind of spawned off of him in terms of when Nomura's designing it. But he got so much of his individuality taken away. His voice was no longer his own because it was Terranaut's voice. His coat was no longer just his because we've got Master Xehanort's coat. Luckily, he kept his own individual parts of it, like how it doesn't have the yellow trim. And of course, Ansem wears it open. His inner coat's open rather than completely buttoned up. And I think we're glad that Master Xehanort doesn't do the same, because I don't think we want to see that old man skeleton behind there. So yeah, there's obviously some differences, but he got his Dark Figure taken away. It's not really his. He just inherited it from Terranaut, you know. There's just so much that he's kind of had taken away. Even agency, right? It was his own plan to begin with, to, you know, get Kingdom Hearts. And then that becomes, yeah, he still did that plan of his own, but also he was collecting the 7 princesses because Xemnas was also collecting the 13 secret darknesses, and they could try and do another clash. So he's part of a larger plan there. And also he time traveled back to the past to tell young Xehanort about stuff and be positioned there so the time traveling could work. So he feels more like a secondary rather than his own driving force. Same sort of thing happened with Xemnas as well. I do think it's a bit of a shame. I actually don't really like the Master Xehanort character's existence. I preferred it when it was Apprentice Xehanort and then it split into two and then they did their own thing. So Master Xehanort being this overarching planner and then young Xehanort time traveling. I just feel like it was adding stuff on before that kind of made Xemnas and Ansem feel a bit less interesting, I guess, in their motivations and took away their agency. It's not terrible, it's just, I do think it's a bit lesser compared to how it was. But despite all that, you know, he still feels like his own character. There are times when sometimes it feels like, oh, he's kind of being like Apprentice Xehanort, but not completely, right? He still feels like a heartless version of that. Just as Xemnas is a nobody version, Ansem is a heartless version. So, you know, while Xemnas is kind of void of emotion, Ansem certainly does have emotion, but he's very ruthless. He's quite cruel, sadistic at times, you know, but also he's obviously got a kind of thing with Riku where he obviously enjoys their little rivalry and stuff, and he's kind of proud of Riku a little bit to see how much he's developed. So I do quite like those little bits. We don't get tons in terms of development, but we do get little bits. And ultimately, the main reason I like characters isn't always just because they've had loads of character development or they have really good arcs or whatever. It's mostly down to how they look, how they sound, you know, what they do, their powers and everything. And just Ansem has all of that for me, and that's why he's my favorite character. And also his boss battles are great. My favorite boss with him, I guess it's probably Riku Ansem, but if we're talking like himself in his form, then definitely the KH1 at Destiny Island's solo one. The World of Chaos is a bit of an awkward boss, but Ansem himself in Destiny Islands, but when you fight him alone with the Guardian, that's definitely my favorite boss of his. And you know, KH3 Remind's boss is pretty cool too. Oh, and I guess I could mention the World of Chaos. I mean, I don't know, actually, I did talk about the World of Chaos a lot in the end of the world exploration. Maybe just go watch that. I think it's a great design. It's really disgusting looking. It's really quite eldritch and creepy, and the organic nature of it, and the faces everywhere, and the fact he's attached to it with these tendrils. Like, it really suits his backstory as the researcher as well, because it feels like some weird, disgusting experiment. So I think that's really cool. And for some reason, he also takes his shirt and his jacket and everything off when he's fighting like this, and he's grown bigger as well. So he's just like, I'm just gonna show off now, I guess. Oh, and also music. Ansem's main theme is Force Del Mal, right? And that's also kind of like Riku Replica's theme. Force Del Mal is a great track. It's so cool, it's so evil, and it's so edgy. I love it, and it really suits him very well. And you've got Guardando nel Brio, which is obviously a form of Destitute. Not quite as much his thing, because Destitute is used for a lot of darkness related stuff, right? Like Master Xehanort has, you know, Destitute, his final boss theme. But still, Guardando nel Brio is my favorite version of Destitute, and I love it. It's such a good track. It's probably my joint favorite Kingdom Hearts track, along with another side battle version from Days. It's just really good. And then we've also got things like Revenge of Chaos and Chain of Memories, which is a Force Del Mal sort of remix, but does quite a lot of original stuff. That's a really fun track as well, if a little bit repetitive, but it's still very good. We've got his DDD remixes, which are a mix between Guardando nel Brio and Dismiss, you know, Terranaut's theme. That's kind of interesting. I like the first one a lot. The second one, I think, suits what's going on because it's much more subdued. It's a bit more relevant to the fact you're fighting mostly the Guardian, the dark figure, on the second phase of the boss. So the second one definitely works for that. But the first one's the one I really like. That's a great remix. The vocals are great. And speaking of, in KH3 we get a remix of that remix, I guess, in Remind with the data fight. And I don't think it's as good. I think it's still good, but it misses the vocals. It's all orchestrated, right? And just missing the vocals means it just loses some of the punch, some of the power, right? It's a good remix, but it's not better for sure. And it's not really the same. Like, some of those Remind remixes are actually as good as the originals, in my opinion, like Limpento Oscuro. But with Limenzo Oscura, I don't think it's quite as good. But it's still fun to listen to, and I do like some of what it does. There's a bit of a sad element to it at one point as well. I'll just let it play now. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool little spin to do on it. And he's also had other themes like the deep end in KH1, that little precursor fight on the beach with Dawn and Goofy. I guess they chose the deep end because it wasn't like a proper fight, it was like a warm-up, right? So that's kind of fun, I like that. He has the deep end because that's the old shit battle theme of KH1. But what's nice is they brought it back in KH3, in the scene where he's with Aqua and Ansem the Wise. There's a slow version of the deep end playing, which isn't on the official soundtrack, which is a shame, but it's this menacing villain version of it. I'll just play a bit of it now. So yeah, I thought that was a kind of a cool throwback attention to detail thing with the theme. Again though, Ansem in terms of music, he's not quite unique. The deep end isn't just his, lots of bosses have it, you know. Then you've got Four-Star Mal, which originates from him basically, but Riku Replica, Dark Riku, they kind of took that as well and did their own thing with it, and that's quite associated with them. And Godando no Brio is a Destiny mix with some original elements, so none of them are purely his, right? Whereas Xemnas, you know, Xemnas has a fight to the death, that's purely his. Sykes has some of it in the KH3 graveyard fights, so there's that as well, but it starts with Xemnas and it still is his like armoured form. And then you have Darkness of the Unknown, that's completely Xemnas, of course. And then you have Disappeared, which is Xemnas when he's a more sort of subtle in his coat, or coat, I mean, like that's Xemnas' theme when he's more subtle and from KH1 as well. So Xemnas has more originality in the themes. But I guess that's just kind of the thing with Ansem, he's this weird amalgamation. Nothing's completely his own, and yet he does his own version of something else. Like he takes in all these different elements and just comes out with a super cool character. So yeah, if I was to say what theme is his, probably Four-Star Mal, right? That's his main theme, I guess. Godando no Brio is his like secondary one for certain fights. And Lemenza Oscura as well, which is kind of like Godando no Brio. And then we have like Forza Finale as well in KH3 that starts off with Four-Star Mal and goes into the other two themes, so that was really cool as well. So yeah, that's Ansem's music. I talked more about the music than I expected actually, but hey, it's all part of sort of building the character up, I guess, isn't it? And is that about it? I guess so, you know? Some of my favourite cutscenes with him, pretty much every cutscene in KH1. I didn't mention the one when he talks to Kairi and Dawn and Goofy and he's like, "So, you've awakened at last, princess." And then he says, "But now it's over." And then he starts moving towards her and it's like, oh geez, he's literally just gonna dispose of her. He doesn't need to. Like, she served her purpose, but now it's over. Like, that's literally how he sees her. Just not as a child or anything, literally just as an object, a tool to be used, right? You served your purpose in opening the keyhole. Now it's over, I'm going to destroy you because loose ends, I guess, right? So like that's pretty dark and I love that. Anyway, I'm really talking maybe a bit too much in detail now. There's just so much I could really talk about, but I don't think I can fit it all into one video and, you know, it would go on for so long. So yeah, if anyone wants to bring up any other parts about Ansem in the comments, I might, you know, comment on those too and discuss them. Oh yeah, and another kind of funny thing I relate to him on is he looks like he's got permanently tired eyes. Even in the original concept art, he just looks like he's always tired. And you know, I really relate to that a lot because I also am like that. Like, my eyes are always tired looking. Or they would be if I had eyes. Obviously, I'm faceless, I don't have a face. But I'm always feeling very tired, and yeah, I can really relate to how he looks to be feeling in that regard. I also just love this screenshot because his expression is just is just perfect. It's only in like a moment he actually smiles after that, but yeah, it's just like exactly sometimes how I look at certain things, like well, certain parts of the fandom sometimes. And his final end in KH3, even though it's not technically his end, but it's the end for when we see the character. That was a really cool scene. Like I said, we didn't really see all the development that I would have liked to, but I do like that he's acknowledging Riku's power. I like that he's saying what a journey we've been on, but he's also saying it to the audience, like, I was the first villain, you know, I was there at the start and here I am at the end of this saga. And it just has a lot of power to it when you think about it in a more meta way. I really did like that. And now he says there's more to seek, so go forth now and seek it, you know, going back to him being the Seeker of Darkness, the original Seeker of Darkness. It's just such a cool like little thing to include. I like how He's mostly talking to Riku in that scene, but then Sora says in a sort of like gentle way, he's like, Ansem. And he's like, what? Yeah, it's time to move on, boy. I think he calls him boy. But it doesn't sound quite as malice-filled as it does when Old Man Xehanort says it, right? It's just a little bit of something there. I mean, he was still a villain, for sure. He wasn't a good guy with what he did. But there's a bit of respect in him at the end, especially for Riku, but even for Sora as well. And he's saying, you know, keep on seeking, because that was my thing. I wanted to go out and explore, and I wanted to know, I wanted to unlock the secrets of Kingdom Hearts, and now it's up to you to explore. And he kind of came to that realization before Xehanort did, right? Xehanort, he had to be fully defeated in order to surrender the Keyblade and come to the realization that it's time to give up. But Ansem comes to it earlier, and I think it's kind of an interesting little thing how his Heartless responds differently to how the actual old man does. I don't know, I just thought it was kind of interesting to see that. How, yeah, he's acting on his original persona's interests, but he's changed a bit. He's become his own thing, especially with his experiences with Riku, right? It's challenged his preconceptions. And yeah, while I would have liked to have seen that explored a bit more, of course I would, because it's my favourite character, I admit I do have a soft spot for when villains in games or anything really accept their defeat. It doesn't mean I want them to be redeemed, and he's not really redeemed, but he accepts that it's the end, right? And gives some advice to Sora and Riku and is like, you know, continue to seek and explore. And, you know, that's something that I want to take into heart myself as well. Continue to explore games, continue to look at details, just continue to seek more stuff and try new things. And yeah, I guess there's just a little bit of advice that we can all take from Ansem there. That's quite emotional and sappy, isn't it? Sorry, Ansem, he probably wouldn't approve of that. But yeah, I think that's about all I can say in one video, because otherwise, we could be here for ages, man. Yeah, you know, maybe in a Twitch stream or something, I might talk more about this. It might be cool to do a Twitch stream one day where I just sort of talk to the chat and we just talk about things, like a, I guess, just chatting stream, or I could play it like a chill game while we're doing it. So, you know, go follow my Twitch. That's basically turn it into a plug. Go follow my Twitch, but, you know, maybe we could chat about these things if you want to, of course. And yeah, that's it for episode 3 of Nova's Rambly thing. If you'd like me to talk about other characters, I wouldn't mind. I don't think I'd do a whole video just for one. Like, I don't think I'd do a Xemnas video, right? Because I care about Ansem the most. But I don't mind doing maybe an episode where I talk about my other favorite characters. You know, I wouldn't mind talking about them as well in a video, maybe doing similar to this, but not quite as in-depth as this one. And that's about it. Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time.